Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I had worked the graveyard shift at Danny's Diner for 6 months. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills. I'd gotten used to the late-night regulars, truckers, night shift workers, drunk college kids, and the occasional creep who had nowhere else to be. Most were harmless. That night, though, was different. It was a little after 2:30 a.m. on a Friday. The rush had died down. A couple of blue-collar guys sat at the counter, a lone girl scrolled through her phone at a booth, and a group of young men laughed near the back. Then the door swung open. 2 men stumbled inside. One was younger, maybe mid-20s, messy dark hair, unsteady gait. The other was the problem. Late 50s, overweight, balding, with yellow teeth from years of cigarettes and bad hygiene. Even from a few feet away, I could smell the alcohol. The older man's eyes locked on me, lips curling into a greasy grin. "Evening, gentlemen," I said, forcing my best customer service smile. "Sit anywhere you like." They slid into a booth I'd just cleaned. I grabbed my notepad and walked over, already bracing myself. "Hey there, sweetheart," the older man slurred, looking me up and down. "Ain't you a sight for sore eyes?" I'd heard worse. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" "Coffee," the younger one muttered. The older guy leaned in, breath sour and heavy. "You got anything sweeter, doll? Say your number." I didn't flinch. "Coffee it is," I said, walking off, but I could still feel his eyes on me. Something about him felt wrong. When I brought the coffee back, he winked and blew me a kiss. The younger man rubbed his temple, clearly embarrassed. I took their orders, a grand slam for the younger one, pancakes for the older, and hurried away. By then, most customers had left. It was just me, the cook, and these 2 men. When their food was ready, I hesitated, then carried the plates over. "Just drop them and walk away," I told myself. But as soon as I set the plate down, he grabbed my wrist. I froze. His grip was tight, sweaty. "Well, now don't run off," he said, grinning. "Why don't you sit with us for a bit?" "Sorry," I said, pulling free. "Got other tables to check on." He chuckled. "Ain't nobody left, sweetheart." I forced a smile and backed away. For a few minutes, they ate quietly. I pretended to clean the counter. Then I heard a fork hit the plate. "Now, sweetheart," he called out, voice sickly sweet. I could have sworn I asked for cherry sauce on these. "No, sir," I said carefully. "You didn't." "Well, that's a damn shame," he said. "Guess I'll have to ask you real nice to bring me some, huh?" I turned toward the kitchen, but before I could take a step, he was suddenly right beside me. Fast. Too fast for a drunk. His breath hit my cheek. "You know, honey," he murmured, "a man gets awful lonely on his birthday." I glanced at his friend. The younger guy looked away, ashamed. Then the old man grabbed my waist and yanked me close. I shoved him back. "I think you should sit down, sir." He grinned wider. "Or what?" Before I could answer, he lunged. His hand clamped on my arm. I screamed, struggling, but his grip was iron. The younger man jumped up. "Dude, stop! What the hell is wrong with you?" The older one elbowed him in the face, sending him reeling. I tore free and ran toward the kitchen. Carl, the cook, turned as I burst in. "Call the cops!" I gasped. The old man appeared in the doorway, panting, eyes wild, and holding a knife. Carl grabbed a frying pan. "Get the hell out of my kitchen, man!" The younger guy stood behind him, horrified. "Jesus Christ, dude, what are you doing?" Then everything exploded. The old man rushed forward. Carl swung the pan, hitting him square in the head. He stumbled, bleeding, and started laughing. He licked the blood from his lips. "There you go," he slurred. "Now I've got my cherry sauce." Aftermath. The cops arrived minutes later. They dragged him out, still grinning. The younger man sat outside, shaking. "I didn't know he'd—" He stopped, sick with guilt. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, heart pounding, the smell of syrup and blood hanging in the air. From that night on, I could never look at a plate of pancakes the same way again. I've worked the graveyard shift at Denny's for almost 3 years now. If you've ever been to Denny's past midnight, you already know what kind of place it turns into. Daytime, families and old folks. Nighttime. That's when the real freak show begins. Drunks too wasted to drive home. Tweakers looking for somewhere warm to sit for hours. Creeps who just stare from the booths, waiting for something or someone. We've had robberies, fights, even people shooting up in the bathrooms. Management doesn't care. I've complained about the broken security cameras for over a year, but my boss just shrugs. People know what to expect when they come here, he says. He's not wrong. Most nights it's just me running the floor, Luis the cook who stopped caring about food quality a long time ago, and Derek, our so-called manager who only shows up to sign papers. No security, no bouncers. Just the three of us trying to keep this place from collapsing before sunrise. I thought I'd seen everything this diner could throw at me. I was wrong. It was a little past 2:30 a.m. The bar rush had died down. The place was nearly empty, just a couple of passed-out drunks in a corner booth. I was behind the counter refilling ketchup bottles when the door chime rang. A tall, impossibly thin old man shuffled inside. He was so gaunt his old brown suit hung off him like a scarecrow's clothes. His skin was pale and tight over sharp bones, and his hands, long, bony fingers with too many joints. He moved slow but deliberate, sliding into a booth and folding his spidery legs under the table. I grabbed a menu and walked over, forcing my smile. "Good evening, welcome to Denny's. Would you like to start with a drink?" His head snapped up too quickly. His deep-set eyes locked onto mine. He smiled, too wide. "Oh, I'm ready, Sonny," he said in a low, gravelly voice. "Give me the Grand Slam special." I blinked. "You sure? That's quite a lot of food." The Grand Slam special wasn't on the regular menu. It was a promotional eating challenge. 20 pancakes, 2 towers of 10. Eat them in under 15 minutes and the meal's free. No one ever finishes it. Hell, even 3 pancakes make me sick. The old man's grin widened, revealing yellowed teeth filed into points. "Never underestimate my appetite, Sonny. I could eat you and your whole family in one sitting if I wanted to." I forced a nervous laugh. "All right then, coming right up." Back in the kitchen, Luis squinted at me. "You sure he ordered the Grand Slam?" "Yeah, guess he's feeling brave." Luis shook his head. "He's gonna regret that." He was wrong. When I brought the pancakes to the table, I expected hesitation, maybe a prayer. Instead, the old man grabbed an entire stack with both hands, unhinged his jaw like a snake, and shoved all 10 pancakes into his mouth at once. He swallowed. Whole, no chewing, no gagging. Just gone. Luis dropped his spatula. The old man grabbed the second stack and did it again. 30 seconds later, 20 pancakes had disappeared. He stood, wiped his mouth, and walked out the door. Didn't pay, didn't tip, didn't say a word. The next night he came back. Same time, same booth, same empty eyes. "Let me guess," I said, forcing a shaky laugh. "Another Grand Slam?" "That's it, Sonny," he said, smiling. Luis frowned from the kitchen. "You better tell your boss. We ain't running a damn charity." So I told Derek. He didn't believe me, until I showed him the security footage. The old man devouring 20 pancakes in half a minute. Derek leaned in. "What the hell?" "So what do we do?" I asked. He exhaled slowly. "Nothing official, but if he keeps doing this, we'll have to get creative." A week later, the old man came back again, looking just as skeletal as before, like the pancakes had never touched him. This time, Derek and Luis were ready. I saw them whispering before the shift. Luis mixed an obscene amount of baking soda into the batter, making the pancakes swell unnaturally. Derek handed me a cup to take to the table, but it wasn't water. It was straight vinegar. I hesitated but brought it anyway. The old man devoured the pancakes, chugged the vinegar without blinking, then froze. A deep guttural groan tore from his throat. His stomach bulged, swelling grotesquely. He clutched it, foaming at the mouth. Then his body convulsed, and with a sickening pop, his stomach exploded. Blood and bile sprayed across the diner walls. Pancakes, flesh, everything. When it was over, all that was left was a deflated sack of skin lying in the booth like a hollow costume. Silence. Then, plink. A penny rolled out from the remains, spinning on the tile before falling flat. I stared at it. I knew that penny. I'd given it to Derek earlier that night. I hate the holidays, not because of the decorations or the endless Christmas songs, but because of what it does to this place. Every December, half the staff at Denny's requests time off, family trips, long weekends, holiday burnout, whatever. That leaves the rest of us stuck working double shifts for a few extra bucks that barely cover rent. Tonight was one of those nights, 2 days before Christmas, and the diner was packed. The air was thick with the smell of bacon grease, burnt coffee, and frustration. The line stretched all the way to the door. I was the only server on the floor. "Hey, I need a refill. My eggs are cold. Where the hell is our food?" Voices came at me from every direction. I was balancing plates, scribbling orders, dodging impatient hands, chaos wrapped in fluorescent light. Behind me, the kitchen was a disaster. We were supposed to have 3 cooks, but only Maria showed up. She was new, nervous, clumsy, and sweating bullets. And that's when he walked in. I didn't notice him right away. Not until I heard the steady tap, tap, tap of fingers drumming on the counter. He stood there, mid-30s, short crew cut, freckles across a tight, expressionless face. Something about his posture froze me. Too still, too tense. His eyes locked on me with this cold, burning hunger. I forced a customer service smile. "Be right with you, sir." He didn't blink, just kept tapping. Maria was behind me, flipping omelets at a frantic pace. I grabbed a plate and turned back to the man. "What can I get you?" "Pancakes." His voice was low, measured. "Got it," I said. "We're a little backed up, but not just any pancakes." He leaned in closer. His eyes were dark, empty. "I want my pancakes." Something in his tone made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Yes, sir," I managed. "I'll put your order in right now." I turned to leave, but clang. Something hit the floor. The service bell. He'd smashed it, crushed it under his heel. "Sir, please don't do that," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've been waiting," he hissed. His face reddened. "I'm hungry." The whole diner went quiet. I tried to diffuse it. "Your food's coming right up." "Not fast enough." Then, without warning, he grabbed a salt shaker and hurled it at me. It hit my shoulder, salt scattering everywhere. Every head in the diner turned. Maria froze behind the grill. I clenched my jaw. "Sir, if you keep this up, I'll have to ask you to leave." His lips curled into a grin. "Or else what?" "Or else I'm calling the cops." He laughed, a short, humorless sound, then sat back down, still staring. For a few minutes, things went quiet again. Customers whispered. Maria kept cooking, hands shaking. Then, crash, screams. The man had leapt to his feet, storming through the dining area. He flipped tables, kicked trays, tore the blinds from the windows. Plates shattered, people ducked. One woman grabbed her kid and bolted. "Sir, stop!" I shouted. He froze, then turned to me, that awful grin stretching across his face. Before I could react, he lunged at a table and snatched a pancake right off a customer's plate. A teenage boy gasped as the man licked the syrup from it. Maria whispered, "What do we do?" "I'm calling the cops," I said, pulling out my phone. The man's hand shot out, kind of grabbing a steak knife. Gasps. Someone screamed. He waved it around, eyes wild. "Give me your food," he shouted. A college kid, shaking, shoved his plate forward. "Hey, here, take it." The man laughed. It wasn't human, high-pitched and giddy. He dug into the plate, shoveling handfuls of eggs and sausage into his mouth. I backed away, heart racing. "Get out!" I yelled. He didn't even look up. Then slowly he pulled something from his pocket, a lighter. Before I could move, he lit a napkin and tossed it toward the Christmas tree. Whoosh! The tree went up in flames. Screams erupted. People ran for the door. Maria grabbed the fire extinguisher while I tried to smother the flames with a towel. By the time the fire was out, he was gone. Vanished. The police arrived 15 minutes later, but it didn't matter. No sign of him. Just overturned chairs, spilled syrup, and the faint smell of smoke. And something else. Hunger. Our manager swore it would never happen again. Promised more staff, more safety, more cameras. But even now, months later, I still get chills whenever the kitchen falls behind. Because somewhere out there, he's still hungry. It was 2:37 a.m. on a freezing Sunday morning, and I was the only server left on shift at the Denny's off I-84. The graveyard shift, as we called it. The one nobody wanted. The kind of hours where the whole world feels asleep, except for truckers, drunks, and people who don't belong anywhere else. The lights flickered overhead as I refilled the coffee carafe for the third time that hour. Outside, the snow was falling in thick, soundless flakes. The parking lot lights threw long shadows across the empty lot, and for a moment I thought I saw someone standing near the dumpster. A dark shape, too still to be human. When I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was just the snow playing tricks on me. There were only 2 customers inside at that hour. A young couple arguing quietly in a corner booth and an old man sitting near the window. The old man hadn't said a word since he walked in an hour ago. He just sat there, staring out at the road, a cup of untouched coffee cooling in front of him. Every now and then I caught him whispering something under his breath. At first I thought he was praying. But then I realized the words didn't sound like English. I shrugged it off. You see a lot of strange folks in this job. It must have been around 3:10 when the door chimed again. A woman walked in, mid-40s maybe, short hair, pale skin that looked almost gray under the fluorescent lights. She wore a thin hospital gown under a long brown coat soaked through from the snow. No shoes, just bare feet, red and raw from the cold. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I asked, taking a step toward her. She didn't answer. She just stood in the doorway, dripping snowmelt onto the tiles, staring at me like she was trying to recognize my face. "Would you like to sit down?" Still nothing. Then she turned her head, slowly, toward the old man by the window. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. It was like they knew each other but couldn't believe the other was real. And then she screamed. It wasn't a normal scream. It was deep, guttural, like something tearing itself apart. The sound made my ears ring. The couple in the corner bolted upright, terrified. The old man didn't even flinch. The woman screamed again, louder, her voice cracking. "You weren't supposed to leave me there." She staggered toward him, bare feet slapping against the tile. "You promised." The old man finally turned his head, his eyes wide with something I can only describe as pure fear. "Don't come near me," he whispered. "You're not her." The woman stopped dead in her tracks. Then she smiled. But her lips didn't move the way a human's should. They stretched, cracking at the corners until blood began to trickle down her chin. The young couple ran for the door. The woman in the gown turned toward them, still smiling, that awful smile. "Stay," she said in a voice that didn't sound human. "Stay and eat." The lights above flickered violently. The whole diner buzzed like a nest of bees. The old man stood, knocking over his coffee. "You can't be here. You can't." The woman lunged across the aisle before he could finish. I swear she didn't even move like a person. One moment she was 10 feet away, the next she was on him. They crashed to the floor in a blur of limbs and screams. I heard the sound of flesh tearing. The couple burst through the exit, the freezing air sweeping in with them. I grabbed the phone behind the counter, but the line was dead. Static hissing in my ear. I ducked behind the register counter, trembling. The screaming had stopped. For a long minute, all I could hear was the sound of the snow outside and something wet dripping onto the tile. When I peeked over the counter, the woman was standing again. The old man was gone. Just a smear of red and something dark glistening under her bare feet. Her eyes rolled upward, showing only white. She started humming, a slow, broken melody like an old lullaby. Then she turned toward the kitchen. "Hungry," she whispered. I ran, out the back door into the freezing night, not even stopping to grab my jacket. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. By the time the cops showed up, the diner was empty. No woman, no old man, just overturned tables, broken glass, and the faint smell of burned coffee and blood. They said they'd checked the hospital records, but there was no report of any escaped patient that night. They reviewed the security footage, and that's the part that keeps me up even now. On the tape, I can see myself talking to the empty doorway. There's no woman in the gown. And the old man, he's just sitting there alone, whispering into his cold cup of coffee. The tape ends at 3:16 a.m., right before the lights flicker out. And for half a second, right before the feed cuts, you can see a pale figure standing behind me in the reflection of the glass door. Now I work the day shift. I can't be in that diner after dark anymore. Sometimes when the sun sets early in winter, I still hear it. A faint humming, like a lullaby coming from the kitchen. And every time I wipe down that corner booth, I see the outline of bare, bloody footprints leading right to the door. And I remember what she said. "Stay and eat." You start to recognize faces when you've worked the overnight shift long enough. Truckers, insomniacs, couples fighting at 3 a.m. Every kind of lost soul finds its way to Denny's eventually. But some faces, you wish you'd never seen them at all. It began one Tuesday night around 2:14 a.m. The diner was dead quiet. No music, no chatter, just the hum of the refrigerator behind the counter and the soft hiss of coffee brewing. I was wiping down the same booth for the 5th time just to stay awake when the bell over the door dinged. A man walked in, tall, thin, wearing a wrinkled gray suit and a black fedora pulled low enough that I couldn't see his eyes. His shoes were spotless, but his cuffs were wet, like he'd been standing in a puddle for hours. He moved slowly to a corner booth and sat down without a word. I grabbed a menu and walked over. "Evening, sir." "Coffee?" He nodded once. His voice came out dry, gravelly, hot. Black. I poured him a cup, steam curling between us. That's when I noticed something strange. His hand. The skin looked grayish, tight over the bones, like parchment left out in the sun too long. And his fingernails were dark, almost blue. I forced a smile. "Kitchen's open if you'd like something to eat." He didn't look up. Same thing I had last time. I froze. I'd never seen this man before. "Sorry, sir," I said. "When was the last time you were in?" He smiled then, just barely. "A long time ago. I told Maria in the kitchen about him." She rolled her eyes. "Probably some weirdo off the highway." So I took out a plate and wrote up an order for the classic. 2 pancakes, eggs, bacon, just a guess. When I brought it out, he was still sitting perfectly still. The coffee hadn't been touched. I set the plate down. "Here you go. Anything else?" He looked at me for the first time. His eyes were pale gray, almost silver, and I swear they caught the light like glass. "Looks good," he said softly. "Just like before." He picked up the fork and began to eat, slowly, methodically, like someone performing a ritual. About 15 minutes later, he stopped mid-bite. He stared down at the bacon on his fork as if seeing it for the first time. Then he whispered something under his breath. I leaned closer. "Sir, did you know," he said, "they never cleaned it up?" "Not really," I blinked. "Cleaned what up?" He looked up at me and his expression was almost sad. The crash. He dropped the fork and it clattered against the plate. "I told her I'd make it back for breakfast." I didn't know what to say. Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket and placed a folded $20 bill on the table. "Keep the change." Then he stood and walked out into the snow. I picked up the bill. It was soaked. Not just damp, wet like it had been sitting in water. The paper was soft, tearing at the corners. And when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't even modern currency. The date on it was 1978. The next morning, I told the manager. He laughed, said some homeless guy probably found old money somewhere. But later that day, the day shift cook, Ron, heard me talking about it and went pale. "What did he look like?" he asked. I described him. Gray suit, hat, pale eyes. Ron rubbed his face and muttered, "Jesus Christ." He told me about a car accident that happened near that stretch of highway back in 1978. A salesman driving home after a long night shift at, you guessed it, Denny's. He swerved on the ice and crashed into a guardrail. They didn't find him until morning. They said he died instantly, holding a receipt for pancakes, eggs, and bacon. I didn't believe him, not really, until 3 nights later. Same time, 2:14 a.m. The bell over the door dinged. I turned, heart pounding. It was him, same suit, same hat, same pale eyes. He walked to the same booth, sat down, and said the same words. "Hot." Black, I made the coffee with shaking hands. This time I noticed something else. Where he sat, the vinyl seat was damp, like someone had spilled water there or melted snow. He ate silently, then left another soaked 20. When I looked up, the parking lot was empty. No footprints in the snow, no tire tracks. Just the faint smell of burnt coffee and exhaust. I don't tell new hires about him anymore. They wouldn't believe me. But every winter when the snow starts falling, we keep that booth empty, just in case. Sometimes when the diner's quiet and the coffee pot hums on the burner, the bell over the door dings even though no one's there. And every time I see the register total off by $6.47, I know he's been back, because some customers never really leave. I'd worked at this Denny's for nearly 4 years by then. The graveyard shift had a rhythm, a beat, the hum of fluorescent lights, the hiss of coffee machines, the clatter of plates, and the occasional argument between drunks and tired truckers. But one night, that rhythm broke. It started around 1:42 a.m. The kitchen was quiet. Maria, our new cook, was flipping pancakes and muttering to herself about the stack of orders piling up. I was behind the counter restocking ketchup bottles when I noticed something strange. The lights above the booths were flickering. At first, I thought it was just the bulbs. But the flicker wasn't random. It moved, slowly, deliberately, like it was sweeping across the room, creeping over each booth in sequence. I glanced at the clock, 1:45 a.m. Then the door chime rang. I looked up. No one was there. I shook my head. Must be a draft. I kept moving, but the flickering continued, and now it wasn't just the lights. Shadows along the walls shifted unnaturally. They stretched, warped, and sometimes seemed to pause. I felt it, a gaze pressing into the back of my neck. I turned quickly. Nothing. Maria noticed, too. She froze mid-turn. Do you see that?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't want to admit I felt it. By 2:10 a.m., the whole diner had fallen eerily silent. No truckers in the booths, no drunk arguing. Even the faint hum of the fridge seemed gone. And yet I knew I wasn't alone. From the corner near the restrooms, a shadow moved. It wasn't human. It didn't walk. It slid, stretching unnaturally, folding over itself as if the darkness was liquid. Maria screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that bounced off the tiles. I turned toward her. She was pointing at the shadow, wide-eyed. Then I saw it. The light above us went out completely. Not flickered, gone. Darkness. Thick, tangible darkness that swallowed the diner whole. I reached for the circuit breaker, my hands shaking, clicked the switch. Nothing. Tried the main switch at the back wall. Nothing. The darkness wasn't just absence of light, it was alive. It pressed against me, curling around my ankles, climbing my legs, whispering something I couldn't understand. And then I heard it, a slow, deliberate shuffle from the kitchen. Maria had ducked behind a counter. I gritted my teeth and called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No answer. The sound came again, closer this time, dragging across the tile floor. I could hear plates scraping, silverware clattering, even though Maria and I were alone. Then it spoke. A voice low and wet, like someone gargling in their throat. "Why are you awake?" I froze. Maria whimpered. The voice was coming from everywhere at once, echoing off the ceiling, walls, and floor. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air grew thick, like I was breathing underwater. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs refused. The shadow stepped into the faint glow of the exit sign. It had a form, vaguely human, but wrong. Elongated arms, twisted fingers that seemed too long. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, and where its eyes should have been, there was nothing. It grinned. Then it spoke again. "You shouldn't be here." They're asleep, I realized. The truckers, the drunk college kids, the night wanderers. They had all vanished. Not just left. Gone. Maria tried to scream. Her voice choked in her throat. The shadow drifted closer, every step silent despite the scraping sound it made. I remembered the door, the exit, and bolted. Something cold grabbed my ankle, wrapping around me like liquid iron. I fell, sliding across the tile, heart hammering. Somehow I made it outside. The diner lights flickered back on. Maria was behind me, gasping. The shadow was gone. We ran to the parking lot. The night was normal again. Snow falling quietly. Cars in the lot. Nothing abnormal. The cops came after we called 911. Checked the diner top to bottom. No evidence of anyone or anything. Management shrugged it off. "Probably a power surge," they said. But I knew better. I never worked another graveyard shift alone. Sometimes when I walk past that diner at night, I see a flicker in the windows. And I swear, just for a second, I see the shadow tilting its head, watching me. Waiting. Because the lights never truly go off. Not in Denny's. It was 2 days before Christmas and the diner was packed. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of bacon, burnt coffee, and fried grease hung thick in the air. I was the only server on the floor. Half the staff had taken time off for the holidays, family trips, vacations, whatever. So it was just me, Maria in the kitchen, and Derek, our night manager, who barely ever left his office unless he had to sign paperwork. By 2 a.m., the place was chaos. "Hey, I need a refill. My eggs are cold. Where's our food?" The voices came at me from every direction. I was spinning between tables, balancing trays, dodging impatient hands, scribbling orders, and trying not to burn myself on the coffee carafes. Maria, the new cook, was struggling to keep up. She'd been flipping omelets and toasting bread at a frantic pace, sweat rolling down her face. And then she walked in. I didn't notice her at first, not until the sound of fingernails drumming sharply against the counter stopped me mid-step. She was mid-40s, stiff hair dyed blonde, lips painted a shade too red, heavily lined eyes, and that sense that she believed the whole diner existed solely to serve her. "Are you going to take my order or what?" I forced a polite smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to Denny's. Can I take your order?" She huffed like I'd personally offended her. "A cup of soup, and make sure it's flaming hot. Can you handle that, stupid girl?" My stomach tightened. "Of course, ma'am." "Will that be all?" She glared at me, arms crossed, not sitting down like a normal customer, just watching, waiting, judging. I went to the kitchen and handed the slip to Maria. "Just a bowl of soup. Hot." She rolled her eyes. "Sounds fun," Maria muttered. I forced a laugh. "You have no idea." Minutes later, she disappeared, probably to the restroom. Maria brought the soup to the counter. I placed it in front of her, relieved the interaction was almost over. She peeled off the lid and then, her face twisted. "This isn't hot." Before I could respond, she threw the entire cup of soup at my face. The liquid hit my skin, not boiling, but hot enough to sting my arms, neck, and chest. I screamed, stumbling back, hands flying to my face. The diner fell silent. Customers froze mid-bite, staring. Maria's jaw dropped behind the grill. She stood there, breathing hard, as if she were proud of herself. "That's impossible," I gasped, wiping my arm. "You work for me, you little brat," she sneered. "You think you can talk to me like that?" "You're a nobody," I stumbled, voice shaking. "You can't just do that, that's—" Movement behind me. Carlos, our day shift manager filling in for the night, stormed over from the kitchen. "What the hell is going on?" "She threw soup at me," I gasped. My eyes still stung. Carlos's face darkened. "You need to leave." "Right now," she scoffed. "Oh, you're going to ban me from Denny's?" Carlos stepped in front of her. "Yes, I'm calling the cops if you don't leave now." Her face went pale. She glanced at the door like she might try to make a run for it. And then Mia, one of the other servers, marched up and slapped her hard across the face. "You think you can get away with that?" Mia shouted. The whole diner erupted. Customers pulled out phones to record. People yelled at her. The chaos was unreal. Within minutes, the police arrived. They led her out in handcuffs, screaming, "It's just soup! It's just soup!" I spent the next hour in the restroom, splashing cold water on my face while Mia and Maria helped clean the counter. My skin was red, eyes still burning. But I was okay, sort of. After that night, nothing was the same. Every customer felt like a potential hazard. Every soup order made me flinch. The holidays never stopped being terrible in Denny's. Even when the line wasn't out the door, even when the kitchen was functioning normally, I'd remember the face of that woman, the pure entitlement, the cruelty, and feel my stomach tighten. Sometimes I wonder, did she ever leave? Or is she just waiting for the next late-night server who isn't ready to deal with a Denny's Karen at 2 a.m.? Because in the graveyard shift, there's no escaping the nightmares that walk in through the door. I had worked the graveyard shift at Denny's for nearly 5 years by the time it happened. I knew the night crowd well. Truckers, drunks, college kids, the occasional creeper who seemed to have nowhere else to be. But some nights bring something entirely different. It was 3:04 a.m. on a Friday, snow lightly falling outside. The diner was half full. A group of tired truckers laughed over coffee in the corner, and a young couple argued quietly near the back. Maria, our cook, was flipping eggs and muttering under her breath about how slammed the kitchen was. I was behind the counter, stacking napkins and trying not to lose my mind over the chaos. And then the door chime rang. I looked up. A man walked in, nothing immediately unusual about him. Mid-30s, leather jacket, baseball cap pulled low. But the instant he stepped inside, the air in the diner seemed to freeze. The truckers stopped talking mid-sentence. The couple went silent. I gave my usual polite smile. "Good evening. Can I get you started with something to drink?" He nodded once, slowly. "Coffee," he said. "Black. No sugar, no cream." I poured it, sliding it across the counter. That's when I noticed his hands, calloused, scarred, trembling slightly. But the tremor didn't stop there. It radiated up his arms into his shoulders like he carried a tension that filled the room. And when he looked up, I realized his eyes weren't just dark brown. They were too dark, almost black, reflecting the lights overhead like a glossy pond. Something in me went cold. I grabbed a notepad, trying to act normal. "Would you like anything to eat?" He tilted his head. "Just watch me." I blinked. "Watch you?" He smiled faintly, leaning back in the booth. "I'm in a hurry." But not just yet. I felt a shiver creep down my spine. I'd served hundreds of customers at this hour, but none of them had ever asked me to watch them. Minutes passed. The diner returned to normal. The truckers talking again, the couple whispering. I kept glancing at him. He hadn't touched his coffee. He hadn't ordered anything. He just sat there, hands folded, eyes dark, watching me. Then slowly, deliberately, he reached into his jacket. My heart jumped. A small notebook emerged. He opened it, revealing pages filled with tiny, precise handwriting, lists of names, times, and dates. At the bottom of the page, scrawled in a hand too steady to be normal, "The ones who never look up." I took a cautious step back. "Sir, what is this?" I asked. He didn't answer, just kept writing, flipping the pages with meticulous care. Then he closed the notebook, stood up, and walked toward the exit, slowly, like he was savoring the sound of the floor creaking under his boots. I let out a sigh of relief. Maybe he was harmless. Maybe just a strange man with a notebook. Then he spoke quietly just before he left. "You'll see me again. At midnight." And just like that, he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I kept imagining him sitting in the corner, watching, writing, waiting. The next night, 3 a.m. again. The diner was quieter this time. Only Maria in the kitchen and a lone trucker sipping coffee at a booth. And there he was, sitting in the exact same corner, same leather jacket, same baseball cap. Eyes dark, hands folded, notebook open. I froze. This time, he didn't move for an hour. Not a twitch, not a blink, just watching. By 4:15 a.m., the trucker had left. Maria had gone to the back to grab another plate, and I was alone. I could feel it, the weight of his stare pressing on my back like a hand. At 4:30, he finally spoke. "Did you see him last night?" I swallowed hard. Who? Who?" "The driver." My stomach dropped. "The driver?" He smiled faintly, closing the notebook. "He never leaves the road. But he watches, and he remembers I wanted to run, I wanted to scream. But my feet wouldn't move." He reached into his pocket and left something on the table, a tiny folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. A single phrase written in the same precise handwriting. "Next time, you won't look up either." And then he was gone. I never saw him again, at least not in the diner, but sometimes when I'm driving late at night alone on the highway, I catch a reflection in my rearview mirror. A car behind me, too close, its headlights too steady. And I remember him, the midnight driver who watches, waits, and never forgets.